wondered what unique challenges and experiences founders face, especially around mental health or wellness? If so, stay with us on the Just Be Better podcast as we dive into these topics with our special guest, Amber Ward, Energy Atelier. We will explore how leadership well-being shapes organizational DNA, the importance of values alignment, and why holistic well-being is crucial for creating real, lasting change. So, welcome to the podcast, Amber. Could you start by giving our listeners a brief overview of your background and career journey so far?
Yes, thanks for having me, Vicky. My background actually started in the creative space. I worked as an artist and designer, and throughout that, I always danced between operations and helping other people run their organizations and running my own startups, initially within the creative space. And that foundation in operations ended up kind of being the backbone and support to my career, which I later worked my way up to COO roles. Over time, I've really seen that this dance between worlds has become, I guess, the secret sauce to who I am and what I offer in the world. And back when I started my career, there was a lot of advice around, choose one or two career paths, otherwise it will be viewed unfavorably. And that just wasn't in my nature. And now I can see the relevance of that in being able to support people, especially through this real shift in paradigms, in a new way of innovations in the way the startup scene works, and being able to help people traverse those liminal spaces where there's a lot of unknowns as we're working toward creating new ways of being.
To your point about a few years ago having more than two careers, it would be looked frowned upon essentially. I still think is the same situation now. I still see on daily basis, especially working with new founders and fresh founders, first-time founders, that they do favor people who have been in the same field from, as I say, diapers to whatever age they are now, which is quite intriguing thing. And I think quite an absurd to expect people to be in the same boat for their whole life.
I say that no matter what we do, if we're fully engaged, everything has a purpose and a function, and everything has experiential wisdom if we look to what it is that we're gaining from that experience. So especially in the earlier stages of our careers, the exploration of both the types of roles that we enjoy, the types of people that we enjoy working with, or the types of companies that we want to work with or create ourselves are really the most important things. And that comes down to personal exploration. And so especially early on in a career, and I think through any stage of a career, there's so much value in following your passion, and your gifts and your zones of genius are really going to come through. And I think that when we look at entrepreneurship and the startup space, those skills are key. And it's also really important, especially for younger founders, to be able to call upon the experience of others where they don't have experience. We now have founders who are incredibly gifted at what they do and able to raise funds early on for their startups, but they may have never even worked in a role before. So I think it's that balance there where if I don't have the skills and experience to excel or lead in the project or the organization in a way that I want to, who can I learn from and where can I gain that skill from, or have the support of someone who can fully execute in that way.
And then your title, current title, is Energy Atelier. What does that exactly mean, and what does your current role entails? Because that's definitely very unique.
Yes, thank you for asking. So amongst all of this, I've woven wellness into both my personal unfolding and into my career. So I've been a wellness mentor for around a decade, and I've worked for wellness startups and as a transformational mentor and coach. So Energy Atelier is really the culmination of everything that I discussed at the beginning of the call, and it's weaving together creative energy, wellness, and my key focus now, which is really on founder mental health and well-being, bringing that into scaling organizations, and also having this foundation of understanding what is healthy organizational DNA. So Energy Atelier really is a bridge of expanding people's emotional intelligence, their intellect and their mindset with this awareness of what is energetic intelligence and how do I use that in my personal and professional growth. So I can give you a little example if you like.
Yes, please do.
So we often see challenges arise in the workplace, and it could be around communication. And that communication could be around a boundary, and that boundary needed to start at the personal level and be communicated by the person who needed to have that boundary. Boundaries are for ourselves, and boundaries, when healthy, are based upon our values. So often, when we look at personal and professional growth, we will touch on values. And so within understanding energetic intelligence, it's looking at not only identifying those values, but how do we know that we're truly aligned with those values so that we can course correct at any time. And within that, that's understanding what is our energetic capacity. So that might be, I have a habit of saying yes to so many things that I end up burning myself out and going through patterns of burnout, or I become so overwhelmed and anxious because I didn't maintain a boundary over what my capacity was because I didn't understand what my capacity was, which is very different to someone having a clear understanding of who they are, what their capacity is at a given time, and then how to work in accordance with that. And once we understand that on the personal level, we can start looking at energy on the interpersonal level. And so we all feel energy. We feel our personal energy. We know what is like, a good vibe when we're in a room, when we go out, we have the best time. And it's like, this energy was so great. Like the people were amazing. I feel like I had a really great time. I really needed that. And then we could leave a space and it's like, whew, I can't wait to get out of there. That is not for me. Like I won't be going back there. So we understand energy more than I think what people care to talk about in the business world, because it's been put into this kind of category as woo-woo, whereas it actually has very tangible results and it's often being held in the upper echelons of, executive coaching. And my role over the last 10 years has been to democratize that and bring it to founders and bring it into teams. And I've even brought that into organizational structures and AI products that has really democratized people's understanding of that.
There's so many interesting topics that you touched upon, and I will try to get into all of them. I think my first question is that I'm very intrigued about how did you end up in such field, and how did you learn that this is something that you're really passionate about? Obviously, you started in creative field, being COO, CEO of the businesses. And how did you end up in this, realizing that this is something that the world needs?
I learned the hard way and I learned the long way. And I can see that that was my path so that I could really see all aspects to it. And I can see also that I'm here to help guide others who their zone of genius is something else out of all of the potential of things that people are incredible about. And that by bringing the most effective tools for specific points of awareness, then that's how we come together to co-create these new paradigms and these new realities. So there's a combination of things that brought me to delving into energy and delving into wellness at large. And really wellness came through my own health and wellness challenges. And some of those were on the physical level, and some of those were on an emotional, or you could call it a soul or spiritual level, whatever your belief system is. And that was through times of grieving and post-viral adrenal fatigue that I actually was in essentially a state of burnout. And there was a year of recovery, and I was working as a wellness coach at the time, and paused all work with clients and really delved into understanding energy. And it actually came from learning how to be. And so I also find the title of this podcast really interesting and nuanced in different ways, because it's just be better by doing, and just be better by learning how to be. And learning how to be is very challenging, particularly for A types and creatives and those of us who want to be doing. And I was in my apartment, which was beautiful skyline overlooking the river of Melbourne in Australia, and I'd see people rowing and running and jogging with their prams, and I would just want to be outside. And I was working with a number of wellness practitioners, and they were like, you're not even walking 20 minutes to the botanical gardens. If you're walking as far as 5 or 10 minutes today. And I was like, okay, like I have to listen to their expertise. And a couple of amazing things happened in that space. Was one, that I really learned how much I like myself. Because when you spend a lot of time indoors with yourself, you really discover whether you're your own cheerleader or not. And I was really pleasantly surprised to find that I had a really great relationship with myself. And that was cultivated over, many years of learning self-love and mindfulness and meditation, and being able to sit with myself. And, when you spend that much time in recovery, you also may learn how entertaining you can be in your own company. And so all of these things showed me different aspects of myself, and also a deeper respect for energy, because a lot of my work prior to that had been around wellness optimization. I've been biohacking before it was really called biohacking by Dave Asprey. And everything was really about like hustle. It was about how much can I stack on top to get out of my day. And I realized during this time of being paused by life that there was another whole level of understanding energy and respecting energy. And so from that, eventually I emerged with some really interesting experiences, and some of them that went into higher states of consciousness. So over time, I started exploring different elements of consciousness without substances, but purely through meditation, breath work, light technologies, flotation tanks, and a whole lot of biooptimization tools that were used in very gentle ways. And it really expanded my consciousness and my ability to perceive things in different ways. I started seeing that I have a different way of seeing and perceiving the world, that I thought everyone saw the world the way that I did. And it was only through conversations that I had with others who would just look at me blankly and say, what does that mean? Or what is quantum energy? And they would be like, I have no idea. And so I would tell them, like, you have created this multi-million-dollar business that is very successful, and these are the tangible results. And I would speak to them about their mindset and what got them there. And they would realize either, actually, I've been having some challenges in that area, or they'd start to understand the tangible realities from one aspect of their perception in terms of, what that made that real in business terms for them.
So I think firstly, I really want to congratulate you on learning to love yourself. I think nowadays, especially, it's extremely hard thing to do to a lot of people. With social media being constantly on our screens, everyone being better than each other, Photoshop, AI, and everything else. And I think from what I'm seeing, that's one of the biggest things that bring struggle to people, especially young people. And then looking from the founder's perspective, you obviously being a founder yourself, went almost to a burnout, and then you are working with a lot of founders. Being a founder normally means being responsible for the business teams and everything in between, which can be extremely challenging, which I think essentially is the reason why so many people struggle with mental health and well-being. What are the main mistakes you think founders make or you made in early days of their career as a founder that actually led them to not being within themselves and being there?
Mm. I think that many founders have incredible intentions to create positive impact through their expertise, and often, just like me, through the thing that drove them to be the expert in that thing. However, with the nature of being a founder, there is a lot. There's a lot on your shoulders. You can often feel isolated. There's a lot of pressure from many angles, and there are very unique challenges to founders and to right-hand people of founders as well, I might add. And I think the greatest mistake is saying that I'll take care of myself later, and I'll take care of really critical things like understanding what my values are later. So a lot of people see
Mhm.
Wellness, and let's use that word because it's one that people understand, but I think it's one that's also the most misunderstood and undervalued. People often see it as an extra, as a nice to have. And that's like
Mhm.
not breathing, you know? It's when we have our back against the wall, and if we don't understand our states and our physiological states and how they're impacted by our hormones, for example, when we're under stress, and take care of that in the moment, then we are likely to make decisions that aren't in alignment with our original intention. So that decision could be the way we
Mhm.
respond to somebody else, especially when we have teams and people who are coming to us for our guidance. And even for solo founders, we are still working with other people. So our ability to communicate to each person with empathy and presence is really important. Otherwise, we burn our relationships, we hurt others, and it's also very ineffective in terms of what it is that we're wanting to execute with the people that we're co-creating with. So I think the greatest thing is this pushing through mentality of, oh yeah, I'll take a day off like when this is done. And for the most successful businesses, the work is never done. That's the whole point. If the work was done, we wouldn't have anything to
Mhm.
show up for. So it's really learning to embody that wisdom. Some people will want to take that on. A lot of people will learn the hard way and then come to learn how to avoid that happening next time, or how to course correct and come back to a healthy baseline, and then learn a different way of being. And so that is all very much at the personal level. And I really believe that personal development and professional development are very much interwoven. We can't have professional development without the person in it. We are human
Mhm.
beings within a profession.
Oh, I absolutely love this saying. I think from my experience, I see a lot of people overlooking personal growth when it comes to professional growth. And a lot of the time I see that, oh, I learn how to do X task and that's it. But at the same time, like by learning that task, you learn a lot of things that is not only in your career, but also in your personal, and that's a skill that you're going to have in in yourself, essentially, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yes, exactly. And so these things are interwoven. So when I spoke earlier about organizational DNA, from my work as a designer, I really saw things as in systems thinking ways. You know, designer's role is to create a solution. It's very much about exploring processes and to achieve the outcome that you want. And so likewise, if we are wanting to achieve a task-oriented outcome, the ways in which we achieve that are either in the most effective ways that work for the humans and or the human computer interaction that is initiating that and creating that workflow, or it's not working. And so again, there are energetic principles behind this. So everything is about the way energy flows or reaches a point where there isn't a flow and we need to course correct that. So in learning a task and mastering a task, it can also really help us to be creative, be innovative, and be effective in the way we're using our energy and the way we are seeking to resolve something that will often create a better use of energy, whether it's for yourself, people in the organization, or the end users of that product or service. So this is also the way personal and professional development are not separate, and the way the flow of energies work between the two as well.
And you mentioned organizational DNA and well-being in organizational DNA a couple of times. What should a founder do to ensure that that well-being is within the organizational DNA and it's showcasing in everything they do?
I think that it's a few things, and it's multifaceted. So it's taking a holistic approach to the people, to the systems, to the culture, to the processes, and again, to the values, and understanding why you've chosen those values as a company with your team, if you've chosen them with your team, and if you haven't chosen them with your team, why didn't you include your team? And then what do you have in place to ensure that you're aligned with those values, and how to course correct when you're not? So there's one element. The other aspect is looking at your systems, which I just alluded to. If our systems aren't functioning well, it's going to create headaches for your team, and it's not going to create an ideal outcome for your clients. So where we see frustration in individuals within our teams, we have a lot of intel. And so when we take the time as a founder or a leader to look at where these blocks of energy might be and how they might manifest, perhaps it's as indifference, perhaps it's as conflict, or perhaps it's as the team coming together and not being able to come into agreement, or people might say, nobody knows what's going on. And I've seen that a lot in organizations where, the startup space is really unique because we want to build fast, but there has to be this balance between how much you put into building a system while you're testing so that you can keep moving. And so it's being able to dance with that actually and nuance that, which is why it's really important culturally to have the right fit and have people within your startup who are able to move with comfort. If people are not comfortable with change, and that is disruptive to their nervous system, and you haven't put the right people in the right seats, then again, there's going to be a huge amount of discomfort, overwhelm, and anxiety in place of teams being able to get into a co-creative flow state. So there's many different elements that a founder can look at to bring together coherence in the way the organization and the people within the organization are working together in flow.
And you mentioned values a couple of times. They've recently been part of a discussion which we call chicken and egg in business culture. So as a founder, when you decide to open your business, you obviously come with your personal set of values that has to reflect, you have to somehow embed within your business. But also when you start hiring team, if you want to build a diverse team around yourself, to a lot of people, those values somehow going to intertwine, but at the same time, they're going to be different. So as you mentioned before, Some founders create values and never ask the team. Some founders ask the team, but then still do whatever they want to do, or they ask the team and they implement what the team wants, but that might not necessarily reflect the values of the founder. And that's where the chicken and egg question came in our discussion. What would be the best approach? Because you still, as a founder, if you want to keep your well-being, you still have to have your personal values embedded with that, but
Yes.
also how to reflect those diverse values, especially from very diverse culture. The world getting very global right now. So how do you ensure that someone in Singapore, China, America, Kenya, and all of the different countries in between has the same set of values when it comes to working culture? What are your thoughts overall on this?
It's an excellent question, and I'm going to give you a high-level answer only because I'm working on something really special that I've been working on for over a decade, bringing together potentially a solution for this. So what I think is really important that you just touched upon is it's really important to have the cultural values of the organization and to also have the values of each individual within that organization, and for the individual within the organization to know what their personal values are. That the person who comes in to work for a company needs to either say, yes, I agree with these values, or these are not my values. And then you have a choice, right? Is this aligned for me, or is it not? And in an ideal world, when a company defines their values, they live and breathe those values. That's called integrity. Now, we don't necessarily always live in an ideal world, and it doesn't mean that founders are intentionally deceptive or bad. It's just that sometimes other priorities take place. So it is important as a founder that if you outline values, whether you've decided to define those values as yourself or to define those values with your founding team, it's really important to acknowledge that each individual comes with their own unique set of values, their own unique genius. That's why you're bringing them into the team. And especially as a scaling team and then into an established organization, that there is space for fluidity there, because the founding team isn't always going to be the founding team. And so at each stage of an organization's growth, there becomes those unique challenges. So if you can map that out with what I would say is that quantum consciousness in the beginning, then it helps you to navigate a more cohesive path forward as you scale the organization. But if you're a founder who doesn't recognize and value the unique values of everyone who's coming into the organization, then to me, that's an old paradigm leader and not a new paradigm leader. And that's what defines the two. And the younger generations are wanting to be seen and acknowledged for who they are. And I think it's really important that we hear that and that we actually integrate that into the way we do business.
And do you think founders, especially when they're hiring very early team for themselves to grow the business, do you think it would be a fair question to ask during interview questions, what are your values and does your values align with our values?
I think it's a good point to raise or bring into awareness into the conversation. A lot of people don't know what their values are. They haven't been guided through a values model. And so that could be in a number of ways. If values was high on the list of an organization, that might be somewhere in their website that speaks about their culture and that they want to know when you come to an interview, what are your values? And so a candidate can look into that. Somebody who's really working toward their professional growth, it's not difficult to look up how to define your values if you haven't done that before. And so that's something that they could think about ahead of time and say, wow, this is like a values-based organization and they care about my values. So it's time for me to figure that out. So I think that's one approach. And then another approach can be in the onboarding as well and in getting to know a team member if that wasn't done as part of the hiring process. And in the hiring process, I think as we need to be anyway, very mindful of biases. And so if a founder has let's say a newer understanding of values themselves, and it's not fully integrated into their life and the way they do business, then I would hesitate to say that that would be a great hiring strategy, because early on in that founder's journey, it might actually lead to choices that are more biased.
No, completely agree with you and really love your answer. When it comes to people who are already working in the business, regardless of their role, how can someone be an advocate for change and promoting well-being and mental health in the workplace, in your opinion?
So I think that anyone who is interested in well-being can be that person within the organization that can help others if that's what they're called to do. So a lot of people will wait for an organization to lead the way, whereas my success has always been, thankfully and gratefully, I've been entrusted to, in most cases, do whatever it was that I deemed necessary within my role. And I also believe that leadership comes from any seat within the organization when we take an approach of self-leadership. So regardless of your role, if wellness is part of your values and you see somebody who is having a challenge, then, and they bring that to you, so you understand and respect people's space, then you can offer them a tool that may have helped you in the past. And that's how I started integrating wellness into the workplace early on. I was working in my role 4 days a week in operations leadership, and I had also started working in my wellness mentoring business. And one of the engineers came to me and he was really stressed and he had a lot of anxiety, and I listened to him and I could see his states and it was very clear to me. And then I simply said, would you like a tool for that? And he said, oh yeah, sure. And so knowing the way that he thinks, I gave him the science first and I explained to him what I was about to teach him and how that shifts his physiological state in that moment. And then I gave him a 448 breathing tool, just a very simple tool to calm his state. And he told me that he was having problems with sleeping. And, he just said, this is really useful if you're awake during the night or if you're feeling panicked during the day, just try it and see how it works for you. And he came to me the very next day and he said, that was amazing. Thank you so much. Like, it's changed everything. Like, I was just in a really bad way. So it can be these very simple tools that you can bring into the workplace that can have huge impact. And so people started asking me to go to lunch with them, and we'd be at lunch and they would be asking me how to overcome some challenges and what tools could they use. And so I really freely, because it's my passion, shared that with them. And that's just how I essentially started integrating that into the workplace.
A lot of the time, a shoemaker essentially is the one without the shoes. So by helping others, constantly giving the guidance, constantly helping them to shape their life, how do you personally ensure that you don't lose yourself in the middle of all of it?
So firstly, boundaries. And again, boundaries are for ourselves and for ourselves to maintain. So these practices I integrate into my daily life. And you remember, I've learned these tools starting with mindfulness and meditation when I was young, and they didn't used to teach that at school. And now they teach it to kids at a really, really young age. So I started integrating these tools into the day to day. And then through my biohacking mindset, I was like, oh, well, if I'm doing that, at the same time, I could do this and this. So while most people might be standing at the kettle, just watching the water boil, which could be like kind of meditative, I might be doing a breathing exercise. Or if I'm at home, I might be doing squats, or I might be tapping my thymus to activate and stimulate my energy. So not only do I integrate these tools into the day to day to ensure that my states are always aligned with how I want to feel, whether I want to be more energized or whether I want to bring my state, into a place of calm, but I'm also very aware of my energetic field and my life force, of my capacity, of who I am, and also what is and what is not my energy, which is, again, going back to understanding through energetic intelligence, what is the personal, what is the interpersonal, and what is our collective energy. And so this has really been integrated into experiential wisdom and very much about experience. So when people work with me, it's like, don't take what I'm saying as gospel, and I'm not here to be your guru. I'm here to teach you the tools, to provide some guidance and maybe deepen your understanding of that so that you can expand your awareness. But ultimately, it's up to all of us as individuals to put them to practice. And then it becomes like second nature. It becomes like breathing. It becomes like being able to, walk across the room in the dark. Some of us can do that better than others. And we're all unique in our journey. And so everyone's process is going to be different, but it's really, for me, about integrating and walking and living and breathing all of those tools that I teach.
Perfect. Love that. I'm always worried about people who help others, that they're the ones that are actually not helping themselves. It's always good to hear that you actually took care of yourself first and then go and teach others how to do that as well.
Exactly. And I think that goes back to your key point about leaders and founders and where founders' greatest mistakes can be. And personally, for me, I don't use the word help because I believe that people have innate wisdom that once they have the tools, they access that within themselves. I'm really here to guide in a way, and I'm pretty specific about language. And also because for a long time, I saw that there were additional insights that I had that would be beneficial for others, but I avoided actually working in that capacity for that very reason. I was like, well, if I'm always helping others, I'm just going to be draining out of my own life force. And for me, there's just something energetically with that language that it doesn't resonate. So it's more about guiding. Everyone is there to help themselves, actually.
So what are your future goals now, both personally and professionally?
Oh, my personal goals are actually to integrate into Malta, where I've recently relocated. It's where my mom was born and my ancestry is from. And so it's really actually doing some things here that are fun outside of work, because working in this space, it is very easy to get caught up with, oh, but it's what I do. And, I love it. And it's part of my lifestyle. So we really have to start identifying, well, actually this is working, or I'm thinking about working, or I'm recording something for work. And so I'm personally looking at, oh, well, what's something that is new or fun to do that's completely outside of my work zone and purely for exploring something new. And so that's what's happening for me personally. And both personally and professionally, I've just added a new modality into my toolkit called spinal energetics, which is an amazing modality. And I'm really looking forward to bringing that into my founder and leadership mentoring. It allows us to be able to recalibrate the nervous system on an energetic way without having to speak about what our traumas or micro traumas are that have been held within the system. And so it allows us to access greater states of flow and ease when we can let go of tension that's been held in the body. So I'm really looking forward to exploring how to integrate that with my work with founders. I'm running some one-to-one retreats over here in Malta, which is more about the art of being and the art of really going deeply into our personal development and into learning how to be, learning how to play, and learning how to do the things that we love, and trusting that we can do that whilst building and founding companies that create amazing impact for others, and really bringing people into that space of breaking that hustle culture at times when they need it most.
And Malta is an amazing place for the retreat anyway. So it
Exactly.
just adds up to the whole experience.
Exactly. It's a really beautiful place, and it's a blessing to be here on this island. So I'm really looking forward to welcoming people here.
Finally, what advice would you give to emerging leaders who are navigating the challenges of mental health and wellness while striving to make that important impact in the business?
I would say don't think that you're unstoppable when it comes to your health and well-being. It's really important for you to be able to build resilience and to be able to be
Mhm.
unstoppable in the incredible impact that you create, to really learn that self-mastery of understanding your emotional intelligence and understanding your energetic intelligence so that you can manage your states, so that you can feel most energized and use your life force in the best possible ways. But also don't think that burnout won't catch up to you if you keep waiting to take care of that, because that's how burnout works. And often there's like a second or third wind of energy before it actually takes hold, and then it pretty much hits like a brick wall. So I would say really look at that as on a holistic level and really give yourself the self-respect, because you're doing a lot, you're carrying a lot, you have a really important mission, and you're also a role model, and people are looking to you to take care of yourself.
I think one thing that I would like to add, if I may, is that a lot of people who are very used to fast pace, they underestimate the amount of time it takes to actually recover after full-on burnout. That was one of the things that I was at fault a couple of years ago, where I was working 80, 100 hours a week in different time zones and completely ignoring sleep and everything. It took me more than 8 months to actually go back to even getting close to where my mental health was before that. And I definitely completely underestimated the impact that can have on body, both mentally and physically. And I know there's quite a lot of people in my circle who has been through the same journey. And every single time you go hit that point, and it's like, how on earth I didn't realize that I'm getting there. And it's like, well, we've been there before, so.
Yes, exactly. And it's really important that we share these stories and support people, and also have people within our networks who can see it and can call it and say, hey, like, when was the last time you had a day off? And when someone says, oh, just,
Mhm.
yeah, when I finish, it's like just reminding them that, like it's really important. And actually your business depends on it. I've seen businesses unfortunately fail because the life force of the founder was diminished because of burnout, and equally that impacts the organization. And sometimes people and organizations don't recover from that, and it also has an impact on those around you. So when a founder has a huge responsibility, and that responsibility is also to lead by example, because if you're not performing at your best because you haven't taken the time off to rejuvenate, then you really probably shouldn't be there anyway. Our ability to be effective diminishes, and people know that, and they feel it, and they feel uncomfortable because they don't know whether they should say something because of the way our relationships with leadership have been built in terms of openness and having discussions. So there's many layers to that as well, especially if you are hiring younger teams. It feels very disturbing to them when they can see a founder struggling, and they can see it in feel it in their energy, or see it in their decision making, or in their communication, because they may not have the empathy, compassion, or patience when they're really getting close to burnout. And so it really affects everyone in a huge way.
And I think it's very important point that you just touched on young and inexperienced managers. If they're going to learn from their leaders who are showcasing these type of behaviors, they most likely going to end up in the same circle of life within a year or two, where they are burning out because they think that's what the good leader and good manager looks like.
Exactly. And we've seen that, and at least in the circles that I keep. People don't value hustle culture anymore. We value working in smart ways. We value optimization, and we value well-being, and we value caring for each other, and not diminishing well-being, and not diminishing conversations around energy by putting them into a woo-woo box that generally to me demonstrates that somebody actually doesn't understand the subject.
So on that note, Amber, how can our listeners connect with you or follow your work? Do you have any specific links that you would like to share, or I don't know, you said you're launching your project. Where can people find all of that?
Thanks for asking. So they can reach out at energyatelier.co, and you will find all of the information there on my website in terms of different ways that you can work with me. Subscribe to my emails so that you can be updated on new projects that I'm working on. And my LinkedIn link is also on my website.
Perfect. I'm going to add everything in the description box as well, so people can easily find all of the information they need and contact you for anything. But for today, thank you so much for joining us. It was absolute pleasure speaking with you. I have another probably 200 questions on everything that it comes to your work and leaders and founders, but we'll keep that for the next time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you inviting me, and feel free to ask those questions anytime.